He'll be joining us very shortly. He is just trying to connect, as I've been reliably informed in our WhatsApp conversation. But before we start, before Jesse does come along, as I am an English teacher, I have a love of words. So I decided last week that I'd start having a word a week. So this week, the word is going to be, there's a little drum roll there, bankrupt. The word is bankrupt. Oh, hi there, Jesse. I'm just going through the word of the week, and then I'll introduce you, sir.
If that's what a word to come in on.
I know, bankrupt. It's fantastic, isn't it? So,
what have I gotten myself into?
So the word bankrupt comes originally from Latin. I noticed when I came over to Spain, the word banco is the word for bench, but it's also the word for bank, strangely enough. And I was like, that's strange. The word for bank and bench are the same. Funnily enough, it actually isn't strange. Back in Roman times, people would sit around the plaza or the square on their benches, and the money lenders would sit on their benches, giving people money, lending people money, hoping it would come back. Sometimes it didn't, and they'd run out of money. And what would they do? They would break their bench. Oh no, they would break their bench. So that would be banco roto, which is actually, which they've changed in Spanish to bancarrota, which means broken bench, which is bankrupt, has come from there. So there's a little bit of fun for you. And I'm going to introduce you now to, as you can probably, oh, go on, say something, Jesse. I interrupted you.
No, I interrupted you. Sorry. But I love knowing the roots of words and the histories of words. I didn't know that. So thanks for sharing.
I am a bit of an etymologically obsessed person. People know I love flags and capital cities, but I do also love words. So you did just hear the dulcet tones of your good friend and mine, Jesse Swede. He is a fantastic, I'm not going to call him a teacher because he's more than just a teacher. But he's a man that knows quite a lot about English. He knows quite a lot about business, but he wouldn't want me to say he knows too much about business English. I wouldn't want to ruffle his feathers. But I've known Jesse now for maybe 8 years. I actually met him when he came over to Seville from the marvels of Korea, but I'll let him get into that more in a while. He came over and he actually substituted me while I got my 2-week holiday for getting married. So those of you listening in the UK, if you move to Spain and get married over here, you get 2 weeks paid holiday. So it's definitely worth it, not even for the honeymoon, but for the whole thing. So that's where I met Jesse. And that kind of brings us up to now. So hi, Jesse.
Hey, Harry. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. I actually had Jesse around at my house a couple of weeks ago as well, so we could talk shop and our children could also play together, which I think is the main benefit of that, is it not?
It was well, that and the pool. So that,
of course,
that was nice too.
But yeah, so, it's never bad. Never a bad thing.
No, no, it's always good. So yeah, I subbed for you. And your wife, your now wife. I subbed for both of you in my first job here in Spain. So going way back now.
Yeah, it is a little while, as we've been married now for 7 years, 3 months, and 5 days. Not that I'm counting.
Congratulations for knowing that.
Yeah. It's that long of joy, obviously, everybody. It's that long of joy. A wonderful lady, as Jesse can attest to. So
absolutely.
Would you like to share with us a little about your teaching journey before we get on to talk about the whys behind teaching? And obviously, why is WHY, not WISE, because everybody knows that Jesse Swede is a wise man.
Oh, you're so flattering. Oh, you and your flattery. Yeah, so my journey of teaching English started in South Korea, actually. And I started in a city called Busan there, and that was in 2006. I went there because I had actually come to visit my friend teaching English here in Spain, in Sevilla, and I just fell in love with it, right? The sun, I mean, what's not to love? So it was very hard, especially as an American, to get a job teaching English, especially since I didn't have any training, I didn't have any experience, and I had no teaching certificate, right? Well, in South Korea, you just kind of needed a university degree and to be a native speaker. So I filled those, criteria. So I went there to teach and planned to stay there for 1 year, maybe two, to get experience to come back to Seville. And 1 year turned to two, changing schools turned to three, turned to, 7 about, which it just turned into my life there, which I really enjoyed it. Korea is one of those places, from what I hear, that it's a place, either it's difficult for foreign teachers to adjust there, and because the culture is a lot different. I don't know, who are the main audience for this podcast? Are they already teachers, or are they other teachers and not just English teachers?
The main teachers actually are teachers in the UK. We are the only ELT based, TEFL based show on here. So
okay, awesome.
We're a whole new world.
A whole new world.
And of course, your many followers who will follow you through the mountains to the death, as you were going to say there, but hopefully that doesn't come too soon. To the final count out, or the tap out, or some other kind of wrestling reference that you might enjoy.
That's it. So I just wanted to know how much context I should give, right? How much detail. So to teach English in South Korea, you need your university degree and to be a native speaker. And but the culture is so different that it's either like, it's really hard for some people to adjust, but some people really love it, right? And I fell into the second category. I loved it. It was, when I first went there, going on the bus was an adventure.
Oh, mate,
I remember.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
but
right?
I'm speaking about from China, from my point of view, where I went. So yeah, it was things like that, Just the smallest things became such a big adventure. I absolutely loved it. But I interrupted you again, so I'm going to let you get back into your rhythm.
By all means, feel free, because I'm sure that, we have a lot of similar experiences that people, might find interesting. But I remember getting lost, having to go from end to end on a bus because I got on the wrong direction and the whole shebang. But I found it I saw it as an adventure, and I loved it. And just like 1 year turned into another, and I really loved teaching. So eventually I made my way over here to Sevilla, and that's where we had already touched on that. And we started working in the English house and subbing for you guys. I turned into a teacher there, stayed there for a couple of years, and one thing led to another. I teach mainly on the line now, but I also teach at a couple private gigs through an academy. I teach at another academy, do the whole gambit.
All the teaching. Now, I mentioned the other day on LinkedIn, I asked the question because, a huge number of my network are obviously teachers, as you have if it's a professional network. They tend to be people in the same profession. So I asked people why they became a teacher, and I absolutely loved the kind of raft of responses that came from it. There were a few people who didn't really know why. There were a few people that, they knew from day one. There was one person who said that since 5 years old, she knew she was going to be a teacher because she'd been teaching her little sister, and she'd grown up like that. There was another
That's awesome.
amazing. there's an amazing, yeah, it absolutely is. There's an amazing writer, materials writer, who also put in there that ever since she would play with her toys, she would always play like schools and stuff like that. And then people who said that it's the only job where one day can be completely different to the next. And then, of course, there was the people who came in it for the money and stayed for the fame. But yeah, then
which there are a lot of both.
Absolutely, so much money in teaching. You know, the other day so much fame. The other day I actually left my bank card in the supermarket just down the road from me. Luckily, it's a lovely village supermarket, and they quickly got it. And I went in there, and they're like, "Oh, you're obviously just so rich that you want to pay for everybody's shopping for them." And I was like, "Yeah, if only I could afford my own shopping, then that would be pretty nice." But yeah, then there were people from different countries. One person mentioned the prestige it contains, and at first I thought he might have been being sarcastic, but I know that in some countries, certainly in China, I was held in such great esteem for being a teacher. Whereas here in Spain, I worked in a private school, and I remember very distinctly one of the 9-year-old students coming up to me telling me that he paid my wages so he could do what he wanted. Here you can be like just under, I don't know, the local stray cat, maybe. Exactly. And then some guy, Jesse Swede, popped up in there. And his answer was the talking about ser en estar in Spanish. Now, for those of you who don't speak Spanish, ser en estar are other ways of saying be. But one of them is a kind of temporary be, and the other one is a more permanent be. So, and when it comes to work, you use the more permanent be, basically. So, why did you become a teacher, and why do you think you became a teacher? Yeah. When I wrote that, I didn't realize that we do use the permanent be for our jobs. But we do, and that's kind of weird, actually, now that I think about it. But it's kind of... And for being married, but not for being dead. That's so true. Well, I guess that can get into a philosophical discussion, right? It could very easily get into a philosophical discussion. Probably not one we should start on now. Well, maybe not. That's for another show. So why I became a teacher, it goes back to, like, I was thinking in be, meaning like who you are, right? I am Jesse. I am an American. I am, although I'm not American, but teaching is kind of who I am. I kind of resonate with some of the examples you shared earlier that I've taught in many capacities, and that's just kind of what I've been drawn to, teaching people. From my Taekwondo days to wrestling to when I was in the church, my church days, I was led to do the teaching. So that's kind of who I am. So if I weren't this by profession, I guess I'd find some way to, I don't know, tell people what to do. I don't know. But so I think the examples you gave earlier were beautiful answers. Like, that's amazing when you can find something that you knew since you were 5 years old, teaching before you knew what a job was. You were doing the thing that you walked into or you found yourself doing. I mean, that's a blessing. That's the name of the game, really. That's success. It's so lucky. I mean, I wish that I'd dreamt of being a teacher, but I think, when the dream of becoming an astronaut slowly disappeared, when I decided that I was too lazy to work hard enough to do that. No, I fell into teaching. I was a backpacker ELT teacher. I was one of those people that just, I did it. I taught because I wanted to travel. I wanted to get out of England. Which in hindsight was a great move. Sorry, everybody, who's still stuck in England at the moment. So I kind of, yeah, I started out. I went to South America to do my teacher training, and I taught in various places. My first teaching job, my first official teaching job, actually, I felt very kind of above my station. I was working for ExxonMobil, teaching there, which, with my sustainability nature now, I kind of look back on and cringe. I was in their head office in Rio.
Working for the enemy.
Exactly. I was in their head office in Rio, and I was speaking to one of their executives. I was sitting there.
Nice. That's a nice early job.
It was incredible. And I'd read like all these books, about how to teach and, learning, teaching, and all these different moves you should do. And one of the things I learned from a business English book, which we'll talk more about later, was to try and get the person that you're teaching, make them not feel as if they're 100% comfortable in what they're doing. So what I did with this guy was I took his nice, comfortable leather chair. Well, yeah, it really could. I took his nice, comfortable leather chair and I moved him out of that and put him on the other side of the desk. So he was sitting in the kind of uncomfortable visitor's chair, and I just kind of sat back and looked out at the Rio Harbour, 7:30 in the morning, where I had these 2 lessons. I sat there, I looked out, I sat back in the chair. I was 23 years old. I was looking out at Rio Harbour. I only had to teach for 2 hours a day to make enough to just about live by. And I was like, you know what? This isn't the worst job in the world, because I could then go and spend, 8 hours on the beach or whatever. So at that point, it was just a means to an end. I just wanted to be able to survive and travel. And it wasn't until I kind of came to Spain, really, about 4 years after that, I got sick and I had to stay here because the Social Security paid for my medicine. And it was at that moment when I actually came here to Seville, I was like, I actually really like this. Before I've been doing it, I enjoyed it. I loved my classes. It was really fun. And the thing I hate about I talked about it last week with Simon Perlman, the image that backpacker teachers get is that they don't really care and they go from one place to another not caring about their students. That was not something I had. I loved my students. I loved my classes. Going into the classes, every day I would be prepared. I absolutely loved it. So I knew then that it was, something that I would enjoy. But it wasn't until I kind of came to Spain that I realized it was going to be a vocation rather than just a vacation. And
nice play on words.
Look at that. That just came to me as well. I didn't even plan it or anything.
From the universe, a gift from the universe.
Thanks, universe. Now can you save our climate? Anyway, so yeah,
that's saved through us, which you are doing a fantastic job of getting the word out. But that's for another discussion too. Yeah,
exactly.
If I can jump in
interject
about the like the vacation teachers and the teacher, I kind of started too. I think EFL is really an industry for like the misfits, the people that don't have other things, or they're trying to find themselves, and earlier in my career, I kind of, I don't want to say resented that idea, but I kind of, maybe that would be a word to use. But the older I get and the more experienced I get, the more I realize this is a profession for that. This is the perfect profession for that. And good on you. And and it's a perfect place for people like you and me, where we were lost and we do find our calling, I guess you could say, or our life's work, or explore it farther. There is that opportunity. And there's also the opportunity for the temporary people to come and try it, explore the world, go backpacking, see the world, see different cultures, experience different cultures, and then go on and find their passion in their life's work. And I hope they all do. And so I've kind of, in my older age, I kind of have changed my stance on that.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah. For me, it is again.
It's a temporary, like you said, just because it's a temporary gig doesn't mean they don't care. And I think that's what I kind of had in my mind. I'm like, you're just here, for the girls or for, the good time or whatever. And yeah, that's true. But there have been very few people, now that I think about it, that I've met, very few teachers that really didn't care. Like I can't even think of really any. Really.
I can think of a few, but not particularly, not a huge number. But for me, I think it's that thing of, when you become a teacher, it is that thing that now you are a teacher. I mean, even if people move away from the profession or get burnt out by the profession, which is, a big possibility because it can be very tricky. I know particularly in permanent schools and state schools in various countries, it can be very tricky, and people can burn out. But I think once you've been a teacher, you kind of always are a teacher. I took a year out of teaching in 2019, but I couldn't stop. So I still had my own private classes, and I was still doing training sessions for teachers. I was still connected to teaching. It was something that I felt, it was that. It's one of those professions, I think, it's a bit like your football team or your sports team. Often you don't choose to be a teacher. Often it kind of chooses you. Not always. Here in Spain, there are people who it is their dream to be a teacher because, guys, again, state teaching here in Spain is the ultimate job. It is the dream job. You work from 9 till 2. And then you've got 12 weeks summer holiday, 3 weeks of Christmas, and you can't get fired. It kind of is the dream for a lot of people here, isn't it?
For a lot of people, it is. And, there's a lot to be said about that too.
There really is. Yeah. The state exam system is one I'm not particularly fond of, but I'm not going to get too deep into that. What I am going to do, however, I'm going to play our first advert and the news, and when we come back from that, I'm going to talk to Jesse about the Eagle method.
Nice.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News with Gail Glenn. The supermarket Aldi, in partnership with giving platform Neighbourly, has committed to support charities across the UK to donate surplus food, with more than 700,000 meals going to causes that support children. Mary Dunn, Managing Director of Corporate Responsibility at Aldi UK, said, "We are proud to be supporting so many incredible causes up and down the country, helping to donate meals to those in need this summer. The school holidays can be a hard time for families, particularly when many are experiencing heightened financial hardship due to the pandemic. And this is why we are committed to do what we can to donate more meals than ever before." Steve Butterworth from Neighbourly added, "The summer holidays are always one of the busiest times for the nation's charities and food banks, but this year we've been expecting things to be even busier. Aldi's donations have never been more of a vital support to these organisations." Unions who represent local authority workers in England, Wales and Northern Ireland have said that staff working for councils and in schools are worth more than the 1.75% pay offer put forward by employers. The unions have stated that the offer falls well short of the 10% claim they submitted this year. Unison Deputy Head of Local Government, Mike Short, said, "A 0.25% increase on the initial 1.5% is insignificant. Council staff have kept communities clean and safe, protected the most vulnerable, and worked in schools throughout successive lockdowns to allow others to work. Their courage and sacrifices need to be rewarded, yet the employers are failing to recognise their efforts. There will be a huge impact on morale. Employers say they'd like to give council staff more, but they have refused to work with us to get the money. These workers, mostly women, are amongst the lowest paid in the country and have seen their pay drop substantially in recent years. This 1.75% offer is nowhere near what is needed. Reps from across England, Wales and Northern Ireland will now decide their next move. This has been your daily education news briefing.
Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 15 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, PSHE, arts, or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique, challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors, and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsia puzzles, and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website, www.CRE8TIVEresources.com. You can get 10% off any order you make on our website by using discount code TTRadio. Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful, and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club. Introducing the Leadership Masterclass series by Diana Osagi. Learn how to ditch your fears and develop your leadership confidence. How to deal with difficult colleagues. How to thrive when you lead in a challenging environment. And how to get colleagues to buy into your vision. Join Diana for her online leadership masterclasses starting on the 10th of July and running all the way through the summer. These sessions are the perfect way to prepare and refresh for the next academic year and beyond. Book your place at courageousleadership.co.uk/events now. The first 50 leaders to sign up get an additional free mini coaching session with Diana herself. Don't miss this. Courageous Leadership Masterclasses at courageousleadership.co.uk/events.
There we go. So we are back. Jesse's going to unmute himself unless he's nipped off and disappeared somewhere. Oh, there he is. He's back.
I got it. I'm all over it.
Look at that. It's like a professional or something like that. Although you do need to oil your desk chair by the sound of it. It's rather squeaky.
It keeps me awake sometimes. It helps me to know that I'm moving. It's like the Tin Man oiling his joints on the Wizard of Oz.
Okay, excellent. Make sure you use, beeswax or something like that, something sustainable. Always good. So just before we left to the news, there, I dropped in a little teaser about the Eagle method. So we've talked about teaching in general. We've talked about why we got into teaching. we didn't mention how rewarding it was, which is quite bizarre because I absolutely love it. I love teaching. I'll be honest, I love teaching all levels. I love teaching young kids, teenagers, and adults as well, and that's adults of all abilities. But can you tell us a bit about?
By the way?
Oh, my favorite. I think it depends on the day and how I'm feeling. I think at the start of the day, I like teaching kids, right at the start, because I've got so much energy and I'll bounce around and, go absolutely crazy. Then I think just before lunchtime, I like teaching teens because, they're a bit lower on their energy and they're waiting for lunch, but, that's all right. That, you can get them through to lunch and they're all a bit excited about that. I think in the evenings, I really like teaching low-level adults. I think the most rewarding class I ever had was a class of elementary adults, where you can just see the kind of delight in their faces every time every new word they learn, every new word they use, you can really see every step of the way. And then for me, I don't want to say the easiest, but because it's not necessarily the easiest, but the most natural for me to teach are high-level adults, kind of intermediate and above-level adults, the ones that you tend to deal with. I'm not going to say it's the easiest, because it definitely isn't the easiest, but you can be much more natural in your teaching. It doesn't need to be as forced. They certainly here in Spain, they don't need to go over grammar or, be obsessed with the grammar, because by that stage, they should have learned most of it. Whereas when they're a bit younger or lower levels, there is that obsession with grammar. Must know all the grammar. What is the third conditional? What is the present perfect? It's like, well, I have no idea. Like, I've got a C1 in Spanish, and if you ask me to tell you anything about Spanish grammar, well, I wouldn't be able to. I'll be honest. I know nothing about Spanish grammar because I didn't learn Spanish by learning the grammar. I learned Spanish by learning the language. I much prefer that kind of lexical approach and that kind of focus on learning. So that's my exactly. So exactly, it needs to be practical, because if it isn't practical, what's the point?
Right.
Oh great! I remember when I came over to Spain, I did Spanish for about 3 months when I was 12, and I could remember turn left and turn right. And I'll be honest, it's strange. I've used it quite a lot because I don't know why. I've got one of those faces that people trust, and they always ask me for directions. I don't know why. I'm quite clearly
even
a
with
foreign
the shaved
person
head
living
now?
here. Well, no, I wear a hat when I'm outside. It's 8,000 degrees outside, Jesse. If I don't wear a hat, I'm going to burn. You should know that.
Fair skin. Well,
Exactly.
I don't have that fair British skin that has never touched the direct sunlight before you came here. So I used to do roofing, and I've always had kind of short hair, so my skin's kind of used to the sun.
Mine isn't. It was when I lived, as I say, when I lived in Brazil and was on the beach 8 hours a day. But since then, I think since my daughter came along, I've developed a phobia of the sun, and I hide from it as much as possible. And I follow Baz Luhrmann's advice of always wearing sunscreen. So anyway, I teased about the Eagle method, and then I went on and I talked a bit more about what I like to do. So why don't you tell us a bit about the Eagle method and what you like to do?
Well, it's kind of funny that we talked about, being allergic to grammar, right? And we talked about, I kind of have made it a point to not learn the rules of the conditionals, actually. Like, if you ask me what makes a third conditional, I intentionally can't tell you. And I encourage my students to do the same. But because, like we said, it's not important, right? It's not important what it's called. But let's get to the Eagle method. And thank you for asking, by the way.
You're welcome.
It's rooted, basically it came about by, as we talked about before, since 2006, a vast majority of the people I talk to are non-native English speakers of different levels. So it's essentially years of asking really high level speakers, that you and I have both taught people that are such a high level that if anyone knew that they were taking English lessons, they'd be shocked, because they'd be like, why are you doing that? Right? So I just picked their brain and picked their method and how did they learn? And I kind of compiled all of what they said and packaged it up in really a method that anybody can kind of follow and use. And the funny thing is, some of the highest level people love it because they are what we call unconscious competence, meaning they don't know how they learned it. They just learned it. So then when they learn kind of, there's a process that I can do this, then they get even higher results and better results. But why it's called the eagle method is essentially, the idea of it is, imagine we're an eagle flying in the sky, right? We're soaring in the sky, and the eagle, they're way high in the sky, and they see a snake or a mouse or a rabbit or a fish, right? Then they dart down, and imagine that is the content you consume, like the YouTube video or the series, because a lot of people, they say, I watch series and that's how I improve. And it's like, do you really improve that way? Right? But this is a way that you can use that to improve, because you're absorbing your content. You spot the specific language that you want to learn, whether it's a natural expression, whether it's a grammar piece that you observe, because I teach grammar through grammar observation. And that's just recognizing the pattern of how a grammar or how a sentence is formed, right? So if we say, if the Titanic hadn't hit the iceberg, it wouldn't have sunk, right? So it's just like observing what language patterns are in there, right? So essentially you're soaring in the sky, you spot the language that resonates with you, this new expression, like a pat on the back, for example. You hear somebody say a pat on the back, then you go down, swoop down, take that, put it in your notebook, and then incorporate that into your language through repetition. And that's why it's called the eagle method. And like I said, it's just from like years of understanding how high level speakers understand language. And it sounds super simple, and that's because it is, right? It sounds super simple and obvious, but that's because it is. And a lot of the times, the best things and the best breakthroughs I've had in life have been the things that were super obvious, but understanding what it is and how it's done.
So like
that's the eagle method.
So just focusing in on specific areas. And so how can that like help? I know that a lot of your teaching is also almost coaching, really. How do you build on that confidence with your students in your master classes and such?
Awesome question. So I just told you kind of like the basic idea, but it starts with like, what is that thing? What is that rabbit that you see, right? So it starts with your goal. I ask a lot of people, well, everyone that I ask who I ask if they need English, I ask, what do you want English for? What do you want to be able to do? And the typical answer that you get is, I want to be fluent. Which that's kind of like saying, getting in a car and me asking you, where do you want to go? And you're saying, I want to go far. And it's like, well, how far is far? Like, how do you know when you've reached far? Is it 50 kilometers? Is it 100? Is it across the state? Is it, France? So how far is far? And that's like what it's, when we say I want to be fluent, there's really no way to measure if you're fluent, because it's kind of like a rainbow, right? There's always more to learn, so you feel like you've never arrived. So the first thing is to start with a specific goal. What do you want to be able to do? Do you want to tell stories? Do you want to be able to have conversations in business meetings? Do you want to make sales calls? Do you want to go live on video, right? Do you want to go on a podcast like this one, right? Like, what do you want to be able to do? And then once you figure out what you want to be able to do, it makes it a lot simpler to find the language to fit that goal.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I mean, particularly with the kind of the higher level learners that you're dealing with, having a specific goal is really important. I know that whenever I speak to anyone back in the UK, they always say to me, "Oh, so you've been in Spain a long time. Are you fluent in Spanish?" And it's like, well,
what does that mean?
I'm better than you. You know, probably. Am I fluent? I don't know. I've got a high level. I'm confident with my Spanish. I speak with fluidity. I'm comfortable in any conversation, but am I fluent? I don't know.
Exactly.
Probably
and if you
not.
don't know, if you don't know if you've arrived, how can you ever get there? That's the thing.
Exactly. My goal was to be able to give I'm also a teacher trainer, as you well know, as well as a talk radio show host. So I'm also a teacher trainer, and my big goal when I came over was when I started teacher training was to be able to deliver a training session in Spanish. And I've done a few.
That's a specific goal.
Exactly.
That's a perfect goal, right?
And I did a few of them back when I was working as an ELT consultant, and there were a few of them here and there, and I was doing sales pitches in Spanish, and that was just because I kind of had fallen into it. But then I really wanted to focus on making this presentation a good one. And it really was, it really went really well. And I'd set myself that target, and all I kind of did was do how I would have done it in English, and it came pretty naturally. But then I've been living in Spain for over 10 years now. If I can't deliver a presentation in Spanish, then I'm pretty ignorant. So you've got a question in here. Have you seen it? I'm not sure if you've seen in the chat there.
No, where do we see that?
It says, Eagles sounds simple. Do you have key tips on ESL, EAL in mainstream classes in school in a mixed ability setting?
Do you have any key tips on ESL, EAL in mainstream classes? I mean, I'd say start with what the students want. And that's what this year when I go into the classroom with the teens, like we're going to start with what they want and where they are, what they find engaging, right? The problem with traditional classrooms is it starts with a book, and all the books are kind of structured the same, right? They start with the past simple and the past continuous, your favorite, comparing past simple and past continuous. And
versus. Past simple versus past continuous. Yeah.
Versus.
And there's going to be some kind of grudge match between the two of them. Here we go. We will take you down.
Ready, fight. So start with your students. Start with what they want. Start with what they find interesting. Start with what they want to talk about, and then allow them to talk about it, and then help teach them how to say it better. I think that's what I do. And last year I started that mid-year, and I've gotten really good results, but more than that, I've realized that my job as an EFL teacher in an academy, and sorry, Centro Interamericano, if you're listening, but it's not to make really great speakers. They're coming in the classroom twice a week after school. We're not going to make really fluent speakers. My job, as I see it, and your job in the academy, is to give them a good relationship with English and make them want to explore further. And if we do that, I think we've done our job because we've created that interest. So I'd say if we can do anything, create that interest in them, listen to them, and let them speak, let them communicate rather than fitting what they say, fitting grammar and telling them to say a certain sentence form to fit a grammar exercise. Listen to them, let them speak, and then make what they speak better.
Yeah, I think the idea of, this, they call it immersive training here, where you go into an English classroom and suddenly it's only English, and that doesn't work for 2 hours a week, really. And
No.
I think that the idea of fostering a love for the language is one that I'm really keen on that phrase. So to relate it to this question, the way I would kind of hone in on it I imagine this is mainstream classes in schools in the UK. The great thing is as well, they're going to be multilingual classes. So the kind of unifying feature there, the unifying thing is English, the unifying language within those classes. Like you said, find what they want to do, and personalize the classes as much as possible. So, if you've got a group of, students who love Fortnite, and they want to be able to play Fortnite online with people across the world, then guess what? There's the thing there's their rabbit. That's their snake that you need to hone in on. That, what is the language that they're going to use in gaming? What are the different phrases they're going to see, the different things they're going to use in gaming? And there are so many YouTubers out there, and I still cannot get my head around this. Why anybody would want to sit there watching somebody else play video games. I don't understand it. I cannot fathom it. I don't know if it's my age or I don't know, something like that, but I can't understand it. But it is something that people love to do. So, finding what your students love. And I've talked about this on a number of podcasts, and really listening to your students, because once you listen to them, you can really help them. Not only what they want, but then obviously when they're speaking and being with them and helping them through it. And whether it's a mixed ability or, a kind of, although I think all classes are mixed abilities at the end of the day, even if it's within a similar range, they're all going to be there's always going to be different strengths in different areas. There's going to be Pepe, who's great at grammar and somehow managed to get to a C1 without ever speaking to anybody. And then there's going to be Juanita, who's been playing video games her whole life, but can't really focus on reading. But they're going to be at the same level, but their levels, the idea of their level is going to be very different again. So
yeah, so I'd like if this person, if they can define what their mixed ability setting, because if it is in England, I can imagine their levels would be pretty vast. So that would kind of change some of the dynamics. And let's look at worst case scenario, if you do have somebody who's, quite fluent and they're kind of bored with the past simple, past continuous thing, and then you have somebody who really struggles to form a sentence. I've had that. And I kind of do a lot of pair work in those and encourage, I kind of work as an example, right? So if I like to encourage people so that they encourage others. So if you can do a lot of pair work and maybe not put the strongest with the weakest, but a relatively strong speaker with a relatively weak speaker, and let the stronger speaker feel good about themselves because they're, being helpful. Meanwhile, the weaker speaker is feeling included. I think that could go a long way. But yeah, I'd need to see what kind of mixed ability we're talking about too.
And what I've done in the past, I had a mixed ability, and it was a multilingual class. And there was one student who was particularly weak and getting really, really frustrated that other students in the class were a slightly and considerably higher level than they were. So what I asked them to do was actually teach me some Turkish, because I had no idea of that. And, I took myself to be in their position and show them, look, I know that it's horrible. It's awful if you don't know anything. And there were 3 or 4 Turkish students in the class. There were also, Colombian students and Korean students. So there was a whole range. And yeah, I just said, right, for 5 minutes, I want you to try and teach me some Korean. Now, this was about 11 years ago. Turkish. This was about 11 years ago, so I don't really remember an awful lot. But yeah, it was that kind of moment of showing them, yeah, maybe you don't know.
Vulnerability.
Exactly. Show them your weak spot, and then that everybody is actually, we're all equal in some respects. Everybody knows more than others. And another good thing with this pair work, if you do have two students from the same country, one who's slightly stronger than the other, then it is useful to put them together so that person can kind of help them through. Not completely translate everything, obviously, but give them a helping hand and be there and be a kind of understanding buddy to help them through it.
Yeah. Give them some security, like a security blanket, right?
Exactly.
And to go with that, if I can, there's this. I used to be heavy English only in the classroom. The more experienced I get, the further away from that philosophy I become, because it's just not realistic. Like, I'm in Spain, you're in Spain. This is as immersive as you can get, literally. And guess what? We have our phones. We have people to help us with, translate something in English if we need to, if it helps. This English only idea, I think that's antiquated, and I don't think it's helpful. What do you think?
I think certainly in a monolingual setting, it definitely isn't. And if the teacher has an understanding of it, I think it can become difficult when there are lots of different languages in the classroom. But helping your students find the links and kind of translanguage and find their own translations, and like you say, using phones or whatever, if that's possible. I know a lot of the times when people go to the UK with no English whatsoever, they've often been forced there. So there are often kind of refugee situations. I remember when I was at school back in 1991. There was a huge influx of Bangladeshi students into my school that obviously had no English whatsoever, but the fact that they had a teacher that could speak Bengali and could help them through it was incredibly useful, and that helped them on their way to becoming more confident and comfortable. But another great thing is, if you are an English learner in England, that or in an English-speaking country, there's no better place for you to be, because you can be truly immersed in the culture. Like the way we've learned Spanish, it wasn't by going to an academy for an hour a week for 15 years, as a lot of people have here. It was just by being in it and getting involved in it and really going for it. So I think that can really help, even though it's really scary. It's losing that shame, losing that embarrassment, and just going out there and giving it a try.
Yeah, and it's a little different, I think, being an English speaker, because there's somebody who always speaks English everywhere. So it's a little different. We have crutches everywhere. Whereas someone from Korea may be going to Missouri. I mean, they're probably not going to find a Korean speaker there. They're thrown right into the deep end.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it does depend greatly on who you are and where you are as well. So what I'm going to do, Jesse, as I can see that we've got about 35 minutes left, I'm going to do the second play of the news and an advert. So we will be back in about 4.5 minutes. So there's enough time for you to go for a quick pee-pee, as we would say in Spanish. And difficult to translate that one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then when we come back, let's talk a bit about the myth of business English.
Sweet. Let's do it.
So let's go
after
to
you pay the bills.
After we've paid the bills, indeed. Let's go to the news and the adverts.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News with Gail Glenn.
The supermarket Aldi, in partnership with giving platform Neighbourly, has committed to support charities across the UK to donate surplus food, with more than 700,000 meals going to causes that support children. Mary Dunn, Managing Director of Corporate Responsibility at ALDI UK, said, "We are proud to be supporting so many incredible causes up and down the country, helping to donate meals to those in need this summer. The school holidays can be a hard time for families, particularly when many are experiencing heightened financial hardship due to the pandemic. And this is why we are committed to do what we can to donate more meals than ever before." Steve Butterworth from Neighbourly added, "The summer holidays are always one of the busiest times for the nation's charities and food banks, but this year we've been expecting things to be even busier. Aldi's donations have never been more of a vital support to these organisations." Unions who represent local authority workers in England, Wales and Northern Ireland have said that staff working for councils and in schools are worth more than the 1.75% pay offer put forward by employers. The unions have stated that the offer falls well short of the 10% claim they submitted this year. Unison Deputy Head of Local Government, Mike Short, said, "A 0.25% increase on the initial 1.5% is insignificant. Council staff have kept communities clean and safe, protected the most vulnerable, and worked in schools throughout successive lockdowns to allow others to work. Their courage and sacrifices need to be rewarded, yet the employers are failing to recognise their efforts. There will be a huge impact on morale. Employers say they'd like to give council staff more, but they have refused to work with us to get the money. These workers, mostly women, are amongst the lowest paid in the country and have seen their pay drop substantially in recent years. This 1.75% offer is nowhere near what is needed. Reps from across England, Wales and Northern Ireland will now decide their next move." This has been your daily education news briefing.
Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club. Every teacher.
I have to say, every time I hear that advert, it does make me think about how much I really do love stationery.
You know what? I was just going to come on here and say that same thing as soon as that ad ended.
I think it's what I miss most about working, in academies and schools and stuff, was the kind of supply closet, as it were. Whereas now, I also try and minimize. I finished a pen recently. I didn't know if I'd ever done that before, but I actually did finish a pen all the way until it had run out and everything. But now I use rechargeable pen. Rechargeable? It's not rechargeable. It's changeable. Well, recargable. I was saying it in Spanish in my head. When you have un recambio. Yeah. What's it called when you can change the ink? Refillable. There you go. A refillable pen. That's what I use now. When I use a pen, I actually wrote a letter the other day, Jesse. I wrote a letter to a friend. I'm trying to get my daughter to write a bit more as well, to get her to write in English as well. And we wrote letters to our friends. And I've not written more than one side of A4 in a long, long time. So by the end of it, my hand was aching. It was tricky. It was definitely tricky. But anyway, that advert always throws me. It always makes me think about stationery and how much teachers do love stationery, because it's just true.
It is.
So,
It's like a toy store.
it really is. Oh, yeah, and I can get carried away, so I avoid them at all costs. It is true. All teachers love stationery. You're absolutely right there, Leanne. Post-its. I've got so many activities that I use with Post-its. You know, my favorite one, I think, is body idioms is a really good one. You know, so you write an idiom and you go and you get someone at the front of the classroom, and then you go and stick that idiom on them. So, you know,
nice.
Any one of those wonderful idioms that you could use. You could hone in on one of those idioms, and then you could stick it on a Post-it note on somebody. Absolutely.
What would you do for stick your foot in your mouth when you have two body parts? That would be tricky.
Well, you choose one or the other, I guess.
Like a yoga English class, maybe.
Yeah, well, they do exist. Also, yeah, I think, yeah, exactly. Post-it, it just wins. I love it.
Dude, yeah, Leanne, I was thinking that same thing. Another Post-it activity that I like are like compound words, right? Like workshop.
Yeah.
So on one side of the room, you'd write the first half of like a series of compound words, compound nouns, and then on the other half of the room, put the second half of the word, and then have kind of a race to gather as many, you know, word combinations as they can.
Yeah. Also,
I may have got that from you.
Quite possibly. I did do a session on Post-its once, I think. One of my favorites is also they're called binomial pairs, but I call them word twins. Things like bits and bobs. You know, I like to put those kind of things, you know, husband and wife, things that always go in the same order. So, oh, sorry, I was reading there. Oh, a gap in the market. It could be. We should get on the Post-it train. Yeah, I squared Post-its. I'm going to keep my eye out for them. That's a very good idea. If not, we could be like Romeo and Michelle. Have you ever seen that film, Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion? And they try to try and say that they invented Post-it notes. We can invent squared ones. So yeah, I do love the tangents that we can come up with, and Post-its is one of my favorite tangents, I have to say. They are great, and especially in language learning as well, when you have to put things in order. I guess in history it must be really good as well, putting events in the right order. I do love.
Oh yeah, that would be nice.
Love some history. Yeah, place the capital city in the right country. Oh man, there's some geography for you. There's so many. But yeah, this could easily turn into a Post-it.
That might be a future episode right there.
There you go. So Leanne, would you like to come on a future episode? We can talk all about Post-its for an hour and a half. Their connection with English and with maths. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah,
that is a dream. I'm planning that for the future. But
I think you found your calling: numbers and language.
Oh, mate, I am so obsessed with numbers. It is untrue. In fact, I did a talk that was called "Everybody Counts," and it was all about the importance of numbers and wordplay when you're learning English. Everybody counts because everybody literally counts, but everybody also counts because everybody's personal opinion matters. So I was using wordplay and numbers. Oh, mate, it was so much fun. It was so much fun because we don't teach enough numbers in English. Something I've actually written in a blog post. But
yeah, you know, it's funny because like we were saying earlier, some of like the higher level students who are like having full conversations, I read a number like 472,892, and they don't know because they just don't learn it. It's one of these things that like you take for granted that they probably know it, so like you don't teach it. Kind of like when I first started learning foreign languages. This happened first in Korean and now in Spanish, like colors, maybe something like that, something just simple and basic that you don't like consciously learn because you just overlook it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
numbers
exactly.
is one of those things.
Numbers really is one of those things, and it's a beautiful segue. I'm not sure how we got to it, to going into business English, because I know that you mentioned there are people who it's been overlooked. They've learned 1 to 100, and that's about it. But it's not only that kind of, the big numbers. Well, for example, here in Spain, a billion isn't the same as a billion in English. It's a billion is a million. So there's that is one thing. There's also the way numbers are written with commas and dot instead of dots. There's all of these different things that we don't really realize. And then the date. People get confused with the date, and then what they'll do is they'll say just they'll fall back on just saying the numbers, and then they won't realize if they're speaking to somebody who's saying it properly, or if they're saying it the American way when they mix up the months and the days. Because obviously you say the month first, of course, that's not insane. So yeah, when it comes to kind of business English, I did that in inverted commas there. Just to
I could tell that actually.
I thought you could. It's all about intonation, something else.
That's it. Intonation. That's one of the 4 pillars of fluency that I teach. But that's beside the point. And another thing with numbers, years. Because here in Spanish, they say like the thousand. So instead of 1998, they say 1998, which also makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense, especially as when we got into the 2000s, the first up until 2010, everybody said 2000 and
2009. Yeah. And now they're like, oh, so it's 2010. Yeah, say 2010.
Yeah, most people now say 2010. So it's like, what year were you born? I was born 26. It's like, no, you were born in 2006, and now it's 2021, and they kind of look at you with this bewildered thing. That's what you said. That's the fun of English.
Yeah, that's what I say too. That's the reason I have a job.
Exactly, because English is stupid, but I love it. So yeah. Business. Oh, somebody's calling in and would like to be a speaker. So before they've taken their call away, they don't want to be a speaker anymore. Obviously, maybe they pressed it by mistake. So business English.
There's a butt dial.
It may have been a butt dial. Any dial's welcome here. Business English is something I've now said about 26 times, and it's starting to lose any kind of meaning to me. It's one of those things. I just looked up on the wall, and my wife's written down for one of her things to do in July is fix her Facebook business account, and now business is just ringing around in my head. What is business English, Jesse?
Interesting question. Business English is nothing. Let's start there. It's this way to kind of bottle up something that should not be bottled up and packaged up as a general thing. And so business English, I guess, is, you know what? I don't even know how to answer that. That's the problem with it, because every industry that uses business English would use it in a different way, right? So if your business is a graphic designer, for example, and you're preparing to give a proposal to a client, you're going to use different terminology and different vernacular and different words and a different way of speaking than, say, a lawyer who is bidding on a job for a multinational hotel branch, case. And you're going to learn different business English than, for example, somebody in the coaching industry talking with a client on a more personal basis. So basically, I am kind of on a crusade against the term business English. I think it's an overgeneralized term that unfortunately does more harm than good.
Yeah, I think
I don't know how deep you want to go into that.
Oh, well, we can go into it. We've still got 20 minutes, so it's all good. What I was going to say is, so this whole business English thing, I've taught a lot of business people, and the first thing you do, you look at the kind of general, the business books, as it were, and they do have all of this generic stuff. I mean, it's great there are certain things there that are really useful. Don't get me wrong, there are bits of it. But my mum's an amazing business English teacher. She's an incredible business English teacher. She's taught around the world, and what she tends to do is more kind of one-to-one teaching, which obviously makes it a little bit easier. But she does use, without using the Eagle method, she uses the Eagle method. She goes into a business and she asks what people need it for. If somebody's going to do a presentation, they work through that presentation. She doesn't go with generic skills for doing a presentation. There are some generic things for doing a presentation, maintain eye contact, this, that, and the other. But if you're giving a presentation...
Yeah, but that's not really English.
No, that's just presentation skills. If you're giving a presentation...
That's just presentation skills.
Yeah, exactly. Look at people. Don't look at your shoes, even if they're really nice. I'm not wearing any shoes. You're in a presentation. You should be wearing shoes. It's an online one. No, that's fine. Don't worry. That whole thing. So she would always, look at what the presentation was for. She'd go in, she'd ask to see people's agenda for the week, who they're going to speak to, what the meetings are. And for me, the great business English teachers are those that look at that business need. They look at what the person needs their business English for, because I think you put it brilliantly on... Oh, it might have been Facebook. It might have been Insta. We can find you on all the social media. But you said business English is a bit like dating English. But you can't,
Yeah.
What is the language of dating English? You go on.
Yeah. Are you gonna, if you're sitting, I think that one was on LinkedIn, but anyway, yeah. Do you really want to trust me to give you a canned expression when you're sitting across from that special somebody and you want to communicate them on a deep level and you recite this list of dating expressions to use on a date, right? And it's the same kind of thing.
You are the apple of my eye, Jesse.
You make my world go around.
Exactly.
Shall we go Dutch? That's a big one. That would be in there.
Yeah, it definitely would. Well, it would be in mine, that's for sure.
No, that would be in a dating English textbook, a list to remember. Go Dutch. Shall we go Dutch?
Yeah, and I can't imagine two people who don't have English as their mother tongue. I'm trying hard not to say non-native. Two people who don't have English as their mother tongue. Using those phrases, because that would be utterly useless. So, I think it's very similar within business, because business English, most English that's used within business is used with people who have English as a second, third, fourth, fifth language. So there is certain terminology that you need to know. There are a lot of idioms that come up within business, but focusing on that isn't particularly useful. It needs to be industry specific. And I spoke to you about this when you were round here, we were sitting out in the garden sipping our Mai Tais, which we didn't sip, by the way. I was strictly on the water.
Yeah.
But we mentioned, I remember when I was in China, and the academy I worked at was in a place called Guzheng. And that is the town in China that makes lights. That's all it does. There are 3,000 different shops that sell lights. Everybody that works there is in the lighting industry. There are factories to make lights. In fact, I was in an infomercial for lights. I was dressed up to be some kind of lighting expert when all I really was a man with a beard, and it's all I am.
Nice.
So yeah, I was in it for Qsan Lights, actually, but it was a very long time ago. It was just after the inception of YouTube, so it might be on there somewhere. But anyway, it was there that I learned about lighting English, and at the time I was like, well, that's a bit ridiculous. But lighting English is a type of business English because it's the language that's specific to the language to the business of lighting. I mean, I've not come across it again since, but there are all sorts of other types of business Englishes that people are going to need to know. You know, you're going to need to know financial English. You're going to need to know design English. You're going to need to. I could just sit here listing jobs, but I'm not going to do that.
Architect English.
Architect English. Well, there'd be a lot of that here in Spain because there are a lot of architects who end up being maths teachers in private schools. Again, another discussion for another day. So delve a bit deeper.
So I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier about starting from a business English textbook. You know, you search on Amazon, you find business English books and that teach these beautiful expressions. But the problem, and there are expressions, like you said, that are useful in a meeting. There are also specific times that those expressions can be used, times when they would sound a bit awkward, times when you don't want to use them. And I think rather than starting from maybe a business English textbook, it would be better to search industry specific videos on YouTube, for example. So if you're a designer, search design channels. And I'm talking mostly to non-native speakers, which there are probably not many in your audience, but let's imagine like teachers who are teaching, you know, business English in a company. You know, it's best to, I guess, research what, like you said before, like your mom does, research what they specifically do, right? Is it to talk to clients? Is it to fulfill clients' needs? Is it to, is it to go on sales calls? And then rather than search, business English terms for that, just search material that someone in that position would find useful. And this is what I call layering your learning, because then they're learning stuff that in our native language, people are searching, right, on how to be better designers, how to be better communicators. So they're learning that, but they're also learning the industry specific terms that real life people use in real contexts, right? And so they're getting
it's really important to know that, because people often refer to it as business jargon, but it's stuff that industry specific terms that are absolutely essential. If you're going into a business meeting as with a huge multinational, then you're going to need to know these words, because everybody else in there is going to know them as well.
Yeah. But the problem with business English books is there are a lot of words on these vocabulary lists, and I don't know if it's because they have a certain number of words they need to put in there. You kind of have to fish out the useful words from the non-useful words, right? Whereas if you go straight to material that helps people in their specific industries, then you'll have the specific words in their context, and you can study it that way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It's one of for me, it's finding the real English in whatever you do it's always going to be more useful to you. Now, it depends if you want to learn English or if you need to learn English. Now, if you want to learn English, finding the English within things that you enjoy is what you're going to have to do. Whereas if you need to learn English, then, if you're particularly in business or something like that, then you have to go to that business. You have to go to the industry-specific language, and you have to root out that language that you're going to need, and you have to hone in on it, and that needs to be your snake or your rabbit or whatever your eagle is eating.
Yeah, that's your target that you're hunting right there. It's that specific term that you need for whatever you need to do. And it goes back then, one of the parts of the method also is, and it's really, I call it the Eagle method, but it's really what successful people use in their everyday lives. It's finding your weaknesses and saying, okay, I have a weakness in my, colloquial expressions at, networking meetups. right? So then you go to videos or go to audios or podcasts and you hunt for these specific terms, because maybe it's not industry specific terms, and maybe it's that when you're at a dinner with a client or something, it's creating small talk. I found with a lot of my clients, that's where they find the most pressure, because they have studied in these formal settings, so they have the jargon, they have the vocabulary, but then when they get in real world situations, networking, shaking hands, and
Not anymore.
in the small elbow bumping and the such, that's where they kind of feel weaknesses, is the small talk. What do they talk about? How do they start a conversation? How do they not get that awkward pause and while they're thinking, what do I talk about? Things like that. So spot your weakness and then hone in on that specifically.
My tip
and that
for
might
that,
be your rabbit.
now that isn't even, for me, that's not even something that's only for non-native speakers. It can be for
Absolutely.
anybody who's uncomfortable in a social situation. My thing is always questions. Particularly if you're not particularly comfortable with speaking a lot, have a lot of questions ready. That way, you don't have to do the speaking. The other person can do the talking. You can do the listening. And that way you can also learn a whole lot about that person. And that person's going to look at you and think, wow, they're a really nice person who's really interested in me, not just somebody who doesn't really want to talk very much. So for me, whenever I'm, with anybody talking about, small talk or anything like that, or even just building relationships with people, it's ask questions and have a whole bunch of questions ready. I know that whenever I go to a social situation, now I'm quite extroverted as it goes, as you may or may not know. But I go, yeah, a little bit. But when I go to a party, I know it's terrible. But if I go to a party or to a conference or something like that, I'm out of my comfort zone. So I'll usually hone in on, my friends or the people that I know, and I'll go and kind of stick by them and try and talk to them for ages. But when I kind of get out of that, what I like to do is I ask people what their favorite flag is. Now, it's one of those really bizarre questions that, people might look at you like you're a bit weird, but it definitely sparks a conversation. It definitely starts something. So, you go in there and you say, hey, what's your favorite flag? Or ¿cuál es tu bandera favorita? And they kind of look at you like, who is this guy? And they're like, why? Why do you ask? I don't know.
That's interesting. Like a pattern interrupt question.
Exactly.
They would call that in the professional setting, I guess, if you want to package that, like a
business English book.
In a business English setting, but in marketing, I guess we would call it a pattern interrupt, right? It's something that makes you stop in your tracks and give it a second thought, right?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I use it as an opener quite often. So go on, piggyback, please do.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Along with that, ask questions, because I actually did a small talk workshop I guess it's a few months ago now. And to go off of that, asking questions, which was part of it. But the real key there is to be genuinely interested in what they say, right? So Exactly. It's not just like a Q&A, and you're going down the list. It's cool to have a list. I kind of took it from a different angle. I gave a certain set of subjects. So family, sports, hobbies and interests, work, because not everyone likes talking about all of those things. But if you have those in your arsenal, then you can start there. And the key trick is follow-up questions too. Exactly. Be good at follow-up questions. And if you're a teacher teaching ESL, teach follow-up questions and genuine interest in what they say. People generally like talking about themselves, and it's funny that if you make them feel good about themselves in their brains, in their minds, if you make me feel good about myself and you find me genuinely interesting, that makes me feel better. That makes me feel better about our interaction. Then I'll go away thinking that you're the most interesting person in the world, even though I spent the whole time talking about me, because you made me feel like the most interesting person in the world. So it kind of works as a mirror, that I'll go away thinking, wow, Harry, he was the most interesting person in the world. Meanwhile, I've spent the whole time talking about myself because you were genuinely interested.
Exactly.
Right?
It's that active listening thing. And like, you know, it can be in, as I say, I've mentioned it a number of times. Like, you can do it in the classroom as well. Be interested in what your students have to say. But for me, I do it everywhere. I think I mentioned earlier about my trip to the supermarket, where I left my bank card in there, and they tracked me down basically. But I absolutely love going into that supermarket. You know, I chat to Lola. I have a chat with Lola in there. She's got 2 sons. She's got twins, 8 years old, so they're a similar age to my daughter. And you know, their summer camp, they're not huge fans of it, but they do get to play football, so that's nice. And then Mercedes, she used to work in the spa just down the road, but she really wasn't a fan of how she was being treated there. So what she did, she moved, and now she works in Dia, where it's a lot better. Also, the till isn't as close to the door, so it's a lot cooler when the air conditioning's on in there. And Javier, when he saw my haircut, he was like, "What? I'm getting my haircut like that, but I've got to go to a wedding this weekend, so I'm going to wait until after that." So it's those things, you know. And I think a great thing to do with our learners, to do with those students, is to practice active listening, to practice questions, even if they're not doing it in English, to practice doing it in Spanish, you know, to practice doing it with people. The great thing about when you go to a supermarket or a restaurant or a shop is you know that person's name. That's the first thing in there. You know that person's name. It's not like when you meet someone, you're like, "Oh, hi, what's your name?" "My name's Steve." "Hey, Steve, what's your favorite flag?" What I always do is repeat that person's name again and again and again, so I don't forget it. But otherwise, you'll get halfway through a conversation and just be like, "Oh no, what was his name? Clive, Colin?" It was something like that. I know that his favorite flag is the Bahamas, but I just don't really, you know. So I often go with. Also, birthdays is another great question. Sorry, go on.
When's your birthday? Yeah, and then you can, you know, usually say, you know, because there's somebody you know that has a birthday similar to that. You know,
exactly. It's your birthday in a month, isn't it?
It is
a month and a day.
Well, yeah. Look at you. Look at you. You see, you've made me feel so special. I'm going to walk away from this podcast thinking Harry is so special.
Oh, you see. And that's, but it's those things because you can then link it to somebody else's birthday that you know. Oh, my cousin's birthday.
My mom's birthday's in September, November.
Whoops, sorry, Mom. I was going to say, wow, my mom's birthday's in September too. So right then. I think we've come almost full circle. We haven't. We've come a long journey, actually. There's no circle in it whatsoever. We didn't start talking about birthdays, but we have ended talking about birthdays, which has been nice.
Which Jesse, is kind of full circle because birthdays are the start, aren't they?
They are. And actually, you talked at the start about your followers who would follow you to the death. Now we're talking about the birth. So we've done the circle of life, I guess.
In reverse.
Exactly. The reversal of life.
The circle of the afterlife.
We've done Benjamin Button's circle of life. There we go. A very specific life circle, but it is one that is popular, made popular in the movie. So I want to say thank you for coming on. Thank you for your nuggets of wisdom. Would you like to tell people where they can find you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, search Jesse Swede, Facebook, Jesse James Swede, Twitter. I'm not really active on Twitter if you'd like the Eagle Method. And if you want to follow somebody that doesn't really post, same thing with Instagram. But no, I appreciate this. I thank you. I had a lot of fun. I hope the listeners had fun too.
I'm absolutely certain that they all did. And everybody, all the millions of people who are going to listen back will also have a huge amount of fun. I hope it has. I've had fun. Speaking for an
did
hour
too.
and a half is always fun. It's been
Yeah.
great. You've been wonderful as always, and I'm sure I'll see you soon. Well, very soon. You need to come over. If not, I'll
Yeah.
see you on. I'll see you sometime
This
around.
weekend, I think. Don't we
There you
have
go.
rough plans this
We
weekend?
do. Well, yeah. Our children certainly have rough plans for this weekend.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good idea. I'll run through those plans with the boss.
With the boss, yep.
There you go. So yeah, it's been lovely having you, Jesse. I'm going to play the outro music now. So thank you to everybody for listening. I'll be back at the same time next week, so don't miss out. Even though most of you are on holiday now, why not tune in throughout the holiday and think about a career in ESL as well, if you want to, obviously. So here's the close music. Thanks everyone for being here, and you'll hear me, not see me, next week.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.